destroyed my SUV!
The sound of metal wrenching and with screaming. It's not the soundtrack you expect when you're brewing your morning coffee, right? Yet, that was the jarring reality that woke me up for the 5th time that month. I'm Jedediah Stone, but folks call me Jed, and my ranch, Stone Creek Haven, sits right on the ragged edge of a manicured, HOA-governed hellscape they call Maple Shade Estates. And that sound was Brenda Carlson's shiny, brand-new Escalade barreling straight through my cedar gate like it was nothing but a ribbon at a finish line. She didn't wave, she didn't ask, she just blasted past with that smug, oversized pair of sunglasses, cutting a shortcut across my back 40. The first time, I told myself, mistake Jed, she's lost. By the third time, when she slowed just long enough to flick her perfectly manicured hand out the window and wave, I knew. She wasn't asking permission, she was daring me. And 30 years spent building houses teaches you not to tolerate people walking over your foundation, especially when that foundation is your peace. See, I bought this place for quiet, wide open skies, and a gate I could shut with a solid thud every night, symbolizing I was done with the world's noise and the tyranny of community standards. My deed was clean, clear. Stone Creek Haven was outside the jurisdiction of Maple Shade Estates. I didn't pay their dues, and I sure as hell didn't answer to their HOA president, Brenda the Blazer Carlson. That cedar gate, the one I'd built myself, was my line in the sand. I hadn't even finished unpacking when I met Brenda, blonde bob, severe blazer, in an SUV so large it looked like it should have its own zip code. She pulled up, gave me a smile that never quite made it to her eyes, and then, before I could blink, she hit the gas. The hinges shrieked a terrible song of protest as she forced her way through, kicking up dust like she was in the Daytona 500, just that dismissive wave in the rearview mirror as she shaved 10 minutes off her commute. I spent that whole evening putting the gate back together, reinforcing the posts. A week later, there it was again. She hit the gate at speed, the wood protesting. I ran out onto the porch, waving my arms. "Hey, that's private property," I shouted. Her response was a mocking laugh as she leaned out the window, shouting back, "Neighborhood right-of-way, Jed. Don't be selfish." My blood didn't just boil, it evaporated. I knew my deed, there was no easement. She had simply declared it so, like a commandment from the Mount of Maple Shade Estates. Later, 2 old-timers, Silas and Earl, just shook their heads when I mentioned her. "You got Brenda driving through your land, huh? Good luck with that. She runs that HOA like a little feudal kingdom. Folks been fighting her for years. She'll bleed you dry with fines." The advice was unanimous. Just let her be. But let her tear down my fence, my boundary, my principle, every week? Not on my land, not in my lifetime. The next time it happened, I was ready. I dropped the logs and marched out. Her smirk was instant. "Honestly, Jed, you really ought to just keep this open," she purred. "It saves me and the rest of the board so much time." "This is my gate," I shot back. "My property. You are trespassing." Her lips curled. "You're new here. Maybe you don't understand. The HOA sets the rules around here. You're not above them." That was the line that stuck with me. I told her to turn around. She didn't. She floored it, dust spraying my boots. I repaired the gate again, but now it wasn't about wood and hinges. It was about principle. Every splinter felt like an insult. The worst part was seeing others follow her lead a couple of times. I spotted a whole convoy of HOA vehicles cruising across my land like it was their new, designated access road. Then the paperwork started. I found an envelope tucked into my mailbox, official Maple Shade HOA letterhead, a violation notice. "Dear resident, you are in violation of HOA standards for maintaining unsightly structures. Please remove it immediately or face fines." I nearly laughed myself sick. I wasn't even in their HOA. I drove down to the county clerk's office. My deed was clear. No easements, no HOA oversight. My gate was mine. But that fake fine felt like a warning shot. Brenda thought she could scare me with paperwork and a shiny SUV. But I was about to build something that would end her little shortcut once and for all. The war of attrition continued. Brenda got brazen. I tried blocking her path by parking my old, beat-up Chevy pickup right in the center of the drive. She appeared, leaning out her window. "You're wasting your time, Jed." This road is for everyone. No, ma'am, I replied evenly. This road is for me. The deed says so. She scoffed. You can't own land that blocks community access. It's against the law. We stared at each other for a full, agonizing minute. Finally, she reversed, screeching off, defeated for a moment. But the very next day, I came home to find the gate lying flat on the ground. Posts snapped cleanly, hinges twisted like paper clips, fresh tire tracks ran across my pasture. She had escalated. It was coordinated. Brenda was turning my sanctuary into a freeway for the whole HOA board. I tried reason again. I walked over to the HOA office. Brenda looked up with pure disdain. Oh, good, she replied, sliding a paper across the desk. You're here about your fines. Nearly $30,000 in fraudulent fines. I'm not in your HOA. That's a lie, and you know it. Brenda leaned back. Boundaries are flexible, Jed, when community welfare is at stake. Boundaries are legal, I shot back, and mine aren't flexible. You'll regret this stubbornness, she spat. The final breaking point came 3 nights later. Close to midnight, I was jolted awake by the unmistakable sound of crashing wood. I ran outside. The gate was in pieces again, and in the distance I saw 3 sets of taillights. Brenda's Escalade leading 2 others, hooting and cheering. They were making a point. My land was theirs now. I drove to the sheriff's office the next morning, but the deputy just shook his head. Without video proof, Jed, it's your word against the HOA presidents. And you know Brenda's got influence. No help from the law. I drove home gripping the steering wheel. If the law wouldn't protect me, I'd protect myself. As I gathered the matchsticks on my 5th broken gate, a dangerous thought took root. What if the next time Brenda tried her shortcut, she ran straight into something she couldn't laugh off? I spent the whole night sketching. Wood wasn't working. I needed something that bit back. Steel. Hidden defenses. A trap. Brenda thought she was playing a game of fines, but I was done playing her game. I woke up before dawn. I wasn't a man who gave up. I was a builder. If I could raise a house from nothing, I could build a gate to withstand Brenda Carlson. This would be the Iron Sentinel. I started with industrial-grade steel beams, sinking 6-foot steel posts into concrete footings reinforced with rebar cages, turning the entrance into a fortress gate. I layered the front with cedar planks, so from a distance it still looked like my old, humble wooden gate, but behind that rustic disguise was a solid wall of steel. But stopping her wasn't enough. I wanted to end a shortcut once and for all. I got creative. I dug shallow trenches just beyond the gate and filled them with hardened steel spikes, set into concrete troughs and perfectly camouflaged beneath a fresh layer of gravel. If someone tried to ram through, the gate would hold them, and the spikes, tire eaters, would shred their tires. My old rancher buddy, Silas, even stopped by. You're playing with fire, Jed, he warned. She'll scream harassment the second this backfires. Then I'll make sure it doesn't backfire. I grinned. Together, we finished the last reinforcements. The gate swung smoothly, locking into deep steel brackets. The trenches were covered seamlessly. To the untrained eye, it looked like the same flimsy barrier Brenda had smashed a dozen times. But to me, it looked like justice. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat on my porch. Brenda thought she could bully a lonely rancher. But I'd built something unbreakable. I leaned back and whispered, "Come on, Brenda. I'm ready." It didn't take long. On a bright Saturday afternoon, the sound came, the low, throaty growl of her Escalade rolling down the road, louder and louder. I calmly set my coffee cup down and watched. There she was, perfect hair, jaws set with that smug determination. And behind her, the HOA treasurer's minivan and another board member's sedan, a convoy of arrogance. Brenda didn't slow down. She revved harder. I held my breath. Then it happened. The moment her bumper hit the gate, instead of splintering, it stood unshaken, anchored deep into its steel core. The sound was like a cannon going off, metal against metal. Her Escalade jolted violently. The front end crumpled instantly with a sickening crunch. Airbags exploded in a white puff of smoke, and the reinforced steel held her. And then came the spikes. As her rear tires spun uselessly and skidded over the disguised trench, the hardened steel teeth bit deep, ripping the expensive rubber apart. Pop! Pop! HSSSSSS. Her SUV sagged forward on 4 shredded tires, looking like a wounded, dying animal. The convoy behind her screeched to a halt, too late. Dust settled. Everything was silent. Then the screaming began. Brenda flung open her door, stumbling out in a cloud of dust, her face twisted with fury. What have you done?" she shrieked, pointing at me. I stayed seated. "What I've done, Brenda," I called back, "is stop you from trespassing. This is illegal. You put lives at risk. You're finished." I stood up slowly and approached the wreck. The Escalade's bumper was bent like a crushed soda can. "You were warned," I said evenly, over and over. "You chose this." She stomped her heel into the ground. "The HOA will bury you in lawsuits. You think you can build a booby trap?" "On what grounds?" I countered, tapping my pocket. "You drove through a private gate, on private property, without permission. That's trespassing. And lucky for me, I installed cameras this time." I pointed discreetly to the reinforced posts where small, hidden security cameras were flashing red. Her face went pale. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "I would," I replied. By now, neighbors had gathered along the main road. Phones were out, recording every second. A ripple of suppressed laughter swept through the crowd as they saw their queen, red-faced, sputtering, and immobilized. "Looks like the queen's finally lost her crown," someone muttered. The sheriff eventually arrived. Brenda ran to him hysterically. "He set a trap. He could have killed us." The sheriff turned to me. "This isn't a public road, Sheriff. It's my private property. She's been trespassing for weeks." I reinforced my gate and installed cameras. "You'll find everything you need on the footage." "Ma'am," the sheriff interrupted Brenda, "you've been warned before about pushing boundaries. If these cameras show what he says they do, you're the one in trouble." The crowd cheered. I walked up to her crumpled SUV, tapped the hood, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Shortcut closed, Brenda." The crowd erupted in laughter. I watched as the tow trucks arrived to drag away her ruined convoy. As the dust settled, I felt pure, absolute peace. Brenda had finally learned the hard way that not every gate can be broken. But Brenda never admitted defeat. The next morning, I woke up to find another envelope. Notice of legal action. The HOA was suing me for reckless endangerment and property damage, demanding I pay for Brenda's distress and the Escalade repairs. The audacity of it made my blood boil. I drove straight to my attorney. "Martha, classic HOA overreach," she said with a smirk. "They're banking on you folding under pressure." "Folding isn't in my vocabulary," I replied. Martha filed a countersuit. Trespassing, destruction of property, and harassment. Thanks to my cameras, we had everything on tape. The court hearing was where it all truly unraveled. Brenda strutted in, but when Martha stood up, she clicked a remote, and the courtroom screens lit up. Video footage rolled. Brenda's SUV slamming into the gate, tires bursting, neighbors laughing. The earlier clips played, too. Every arrogant smirk, every shouted community easement. When Brenda was called to testify, she melted down. "I am the president. He can't define me." The judge slammed his gavel. "Sit down." Her credibility was shredded. The ruling came swift and sharp. The court dismissed the HOA's claims entirely, ordered them to pay me damages for trespassing, and fined Brenda personally for harassment. The humiliation was complete. Back in Maple Shade, the fallout was brutal. Neighbors finally spoke up. Board members resigned. The HOA's reputation was in shambles, and Brenda was left isolated. And me, I sat on my porch, watching the sun sink. Now, here's the kicker. The final twist I'd been holding on to like a loaded gun. While Brenda was screaming about community rights, I had quietly gone back through county records and discovered something crucial. The road she claimed as community property, it wasn't even listed as public. It was, and always had been, mine. Deed to me, paid for in full. Every dollar she spent on lawsuits, every ounce of energy she wasted trying to dominate me, it all crumbled with that single piece of paper. When Brenda received my final response, confirming that the entire road was private property. The meltdown was immediate. She stormed onto my property one last time, waving the letter. "This is fraud. You can't own that road." I walked calmly to the edge of my porch. "Check the records, Brenda. County clerk's office. Deeds in my name. Always has been." Her face twisted with disbelief. When she realized she was out of power, she let out a strangled scream and stormed off for the very last time. From that day forward, Brenda never drove through my gate again. The HOA, stripped of its tyrant leader, limped along quietly, and my ranch finally became the sanctuary I'd imagined. The gate stood tall, stronger than ever, guarding not just my land, but my dignity. I hadn't stooped to her level of intimidation. I'd built something unbreakable, stood my ground, and let the truth and a little bit of steel do the rest. Looking back now, this story wasn't just about a gate or an SUV. It was about boundaries and the courage it takes to defend them. Life will always have people who think rules don't apply to them, who try to push past your lines. They'll test your patience until you either break or you build something stronger. I chose to build, and that's the lesson I want to leave with you. In life, your gate might not be made of wood and steel. It might be your time, your energy, your dignity, or your peace of mind. But whatever it is, don't let anyone trample through it just because they think they can. Set your boundaries. Reinforce them. And when someone refuses to respect them, don't back down, because respect isn't given, it's earned. And sometimes you have to demand it. So I'll ask you this. What's the gate in your life that you need to protect? Was Jed right to set a trap? Or should he have just let the law handle it? Even if the law was compromised? Drop your answer in the comments below. I want to know if you think justice sometimes requires a little bit of steel. And if you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, there are plenty more HOA battles, Brenda dramas, and tales of sweet, sweet revenge coming your way.